in the obscure and nearly abandoned hamlet known as Ravenswood, concealed within the depths of age-old woodlands and enshrouded perpetually in a mist that defied the passage of time, an ominous specter cast its foreboding shadow over the unsuspecting denizens. Murmurs among the townsfolk hinted at a history steeped in malevolence, a narrative entangled within layers of fear and obstinate denial. According to local lore, an evil force, dormant for centuries, would awaken cyclically, unleashing chaos upon the town precisely for 13 consecutive nights. A T, the stroke of midnight on the eve of the 13th night, an icy fog, bone-chilling and ethereal, descended upon Ravenswood. The atmosphere thickened with an otherworldly tension, and the moon assumed a ghastly hue of crimson, casting an eerie pallor over the town. A disconcerting hush enveloped the streets as Eliza, an unwitting harbinger, stepped into the obscurity, unaware that the fate of the town teetered precariously. Eliza traversed the deserted avenues, her solitary footsteps accompanied only by the distant, haunting howls of unseen wolves. The wavering streetlights cast elongated, contorted shadows that pirouetted to an unsettling melody. In the obsidian stillness, she felt unseen eyes observing her from the recesses, while an icy zephyr divulged ominous secrets through the desolate alleyways. Approaching the age-old graveyard, Eliza perceived an uncanny animation among the gravestones, their long-forgotten denizens clawing their spectral forms to the surface. Tombstones groaned in protest as the earth beneath them convulsed, fissures exposing a portal to the netherworld. The air resonated with anguished wails as damned spirits emerged, their hollow gazes fixated on the living. A T, the nucleus of the cemetery, stood a deteriorating mausoleum, its stone facade embellished with grotesque carvings depicting the torment of lost souls. Driven by an imperceptible force, Eliza approached the mausoleum and exerted her strength to open its ponderous door. The air within reeked of decay, and an unholy luminescence radiated from the abyss. Descending into the crypt, the temperature plummeted, and the darkness intensified, each step plunging Eliza into an abyss of increasing malevolence. Sinister murmurs reverberated through the cavernous expanse, each utterance pregnant with malice. The walls seemed to constrict, and shadows warped into grotesque configurations. Eliza's heart raced as the realization dawned upon her. She was not alone. A ghastly figure, draped in tattered robes, manifested before her. Its visage obscured by a hood, skeletal hands reached out, beckoning her closer. The very air pulsated with malevolence as the figure articulated in a guttural voice, recounting the sins of Ravenswood and the exigent price it must pay. Paralyzed by fear, Eliza listened as the figure delineated a cursed ritual binding the town to an ancient pact. To break the curse, a sacrifice, the soul of an innocent willingly offered, was indispensable. The spectral hand extended towards Eliza, offering her the pivotal choice that would dictate the town's destiny. With a heart quivering in trepidation, Eliza made a decision echoing through the sepulchral chamber. The figure grinned, a grotesque expression sending shivers down her spine. The very ground beneath them quivered as the ritual unfurled, sealing Ravenswood's fate for another century. As the first rays of dawn shattered the mist, the town stirred to an eerie tranquility. The fog lifted, and the malevolent presence dissipated, akin to a nightmare fading into the recesses of memory. Ravenswood reverted to normalcy, its inhabitants blissfully oblivious to the horrors that had transpired in the shadows. Nevertheless, as the years elapsed, the town dwelled beneath the perpetual specter of the curse, a somber secret etched into its very foundations. Whispers of the 13th night lingered, an unsettling reminder that the horrors of Ravenswood were destined to resurface, akin to a recurring nightmare unwilling to be consigned to oblivion. The townsfolk pursued their lives, yet shadows perpetually loitered, and the misty veil of terror clung tenaciously to Ravenswood, biding its time for the next chapter of its malevolent narrative to unfold. Deep within the labyrinthine heart of Ravenswood, ensconced in the enigmatic embrace of an impenetrable forest, an ominous and disquieting aura clung to the air like a spectral residue. Hushed murmurs and secretive whispers woven into the very fabric of the town reverberated among the townsfolk, entwining with the palpable sense of trepidation that permeated the atmosphere. The arcane narrative of Ravenswood unfurled itself like a time-worn tapestry, resonating with the haunting legend of the time horror, an ancient malevolence that, like an insidious specter, had cast its ominous shadow upon the town for untold centuries. A macabre tale spoke of the temporal tapestry unraveling at the stroke of midnight every century, unleashing indescribable horrors upon the hapless denizens ensnared within the web of Ravenswood's fate. The genesis of this eerie chronicle traced back to the enigmatic vanishing of the Pendleton family, progenitors of the town. In the moon-shrouded year of 1723, the Pendletons, entwined in a forbidden dance with the fabric of time, sought to manipulate temporal currents. At the bewitching hour, an icy zephyr swept through Ravenswood, extinguishing every flicker of candlelight, shrouding the town in an abyssal darkness. As dawn broke, the Pendleton abode lay in ruins, bereft of the family's presence. Only cryptic symbols etched into the walls persisted, cryptic vestiges of a ritual gone awry. Attempts to expunge these arcane marks proved futile. They, like an unrelenting revenant, resurfaced cyclically, marking the passage of each century with grim foreboding. Through the eons, Ravenswood metamorphosed into a crucible of fear, where whispers of peculiar events crescendoed into a disconcerting cacophony. Shadows cavorted menacingly at the periphery of residents' vision, and disconcerting murmurs echoed through the deserted thoroughfares. An ineffable, otherworldly miasma pervaded the air, stifling any utterance regarding the impending calamity that hung menacingly overhead. Approaching the dawn of the 21st century, a valiant cadre resolved to plumb the mysteries enshrouding Ravenswood. Armed with venerable tomes and an insatiable thirst for enlightenment, they unearthed the forbidden secrets of the Pendleton's temporal gambit, a desperate bid to manipulate time and rend the very fabric of reality itself. Their collective resolve coalesced within the dilapidated Pendleton mansion on the cusp of the century. As the clock inexorably approached midnight, an oppressive aura enveloped the gathering, the malevolent energy pulsating with a rhythm that mirrored a sinister heartbeat. The temperature plummeted, and an unsettling tension permeated the atmosphere with each fleeting second. At the stroke of midnight, the chamber convulsed with an unearthly force, ensnaring the group in a nightmarish tableau, a distorted reflection of Ravenswood where time gyrated and reality contorted. Shadows transmogrified into grotesque phantasms, and the air resonated with the anguished echoes of tormented souls. One by one, the intrepid adventurers succumbed to the inexorable horrors of the time horror. They confronted their deepest fears, entangled in a web where reality and nightmare intertwined in a kaleidoscopic dance. As the tortured souls of Ravenswood merged with the malevolent force, The town itself seemed to pulse with a maleficent vitality. Amidst the pandemonium, a lone survivor stumbled upon the clandestine ritual chamber beneath the mansion. Quivering hands deciphered ancient symbols, and an incantation, pregnant with desperation, reverberated through the chamber, intending to mend the very fabric of time. The room convulsed, and a blinding radiance engulfed everything. When the survivors opened their eyes, they found themselves ensconced in the familiar Ravenswood, the curse seemingly shattered. The mansion stood silent, bereft of the malevolent energy that had plagued the town for centuries. Yet, the survivors bore the indelible scars of their harrowing odyssey, haunted by the memories of the time horror. As the first rays of dawn cascaded over Ravenswood, the denizens stirred to a town seemingly unaltered. The tales of the time horror ebbed into murmurs, and life tentatively resumed its semblance of normalcy. Nevertheless, the survivors harbored the immutable realization of the toll exacted by temporal meddling, and the shadows of the past lingered in the recesses of their minds, a perpetual reminder of the horrors confronted within the crucible of the time horror. In the shadow-drenched enclave of Ravenshade, where an ancient forest's secrets whispered in the wind, an eerie premonition clung to the atmosphere like a dense mist. Legends intertwined with the town's fabric spoke of a mansion ensconced in the periphery, concealed amid twisted arboreal sentinels and hushed rumors. Blackthorn Manor, a repository of spectral angst, echoed with the tortured echoes of those ensnared by a sinister influence entwined within its crumbling walls. As the sun descended beneath the skyline, projecting elongated, malevolent shadows upon the cobblestone thoroughfares, a cadre of intrepid companions gathered at the town's outskirts. Drawn by the enigmatic narratives surrounding Blackthorn Manor, their dares to confront the haunted dwelling unwittingly thrust them into the frigid abyss of impending dread. A moon, pallid and watchful, surveyed the group's advance toward the mansion. Each footfall heralded a drop in temperature, and the breeze, like an ancient soothsayer, divulged enigmatic truths through skeletal boughs overhead. The creaking gates of Blackthorn Manor swung ajar with a spectral lament, embracing the unassuming visitors in its maleficent clasp. Within, the group bore the weight of the mansion's history, an oppressive force bearing down on them. Dust-laden chandeliers oscillated in the stagnant air, casting grotesque shadows upon peeling wallpaper. The floor pulsed with a malevolent vigor, as though the very essence of the house recoiled at their intrusion. As the clock heralded midnight, an eerie melody reverberated through the halls, emanating from an unseen hand playing a grand piano in the parlor. Nervous glances were exchanged, bravado crumbling before the supernatural symphony. Doors slammed shut, ensnaring them in a labyrinthine network of corridors, each seemingly reshaping itself with malicious intent. Whispers filled the air, ethereal voices recounting long-buried sins and unspeakable tragedies. Ghostly specters materialized in the flickering candlelight, their vacant eyes piercing the intruders' souls. The temperature plummeted, breath visible in the icy air as the malevolent force within Blackthorn Manor feasted on their fear. One by one, the friends succumbed to relentless horrors. Shadowy figures dragged them into the abyss of the mansion's dark history, their anguished screams echoing through the halls. The survivors, paralyzed by terror, stumbled upon a clandestine chamber at the mansion's core. Within the chamber, an ancient tome lay open on a blood-stained altar. Its pages chronicled a pact forged centuries past with a malevolent entity, a being that thrived on the living's suffering. Too late, The friends realized they were mere pawns in a nightmarish game, the mansion a stage for the entity's sadistic amusement. As the survivors intoned unholy incantations from the tome, reality unraveled. The mansion's walls groaned as the malevolent force devoured everything. Ravenshade vanished into the abyss, the cursed mansion, a spectral monument to the horrors within. Blackthorn Manor persists as a foreboding silhouette on the edge of oblivion, a somber reminder of the night the living trespassed into the realm of the dead. The air resonates with the tormented wails of lost souls, and those who catch the haunting melody played on the grand piano recognize the presence of unspeakable evil. Legends of Ravenshade recount the cursed mansion, and townsfolk shudder at the mere mention of Blackthorn Manor. Its malevolent legacy reverberates through the ages, an unsettling saga of time-warped horror that refuses to fade from memory. In the long-forgotten hamlet of Ravensbrook, ensconced deep within the labyrinthine boscage, an antiquated edifice named Blackthorn Manor loomed with ancient gravitas. Deserted for epochs, the formidable structure cast a looming and ominous penumbra over the barren expanse. Gossipy locals murmured about its malevolent saga, postulating that an indescribable malevolence had permeated its very foundations. On an ill-fated eve, a cadre of inquisitive adolescents, lured by the forbidden enigmas, opted to traverse the crumbling corridors of Blackthorn Manor. As the clock chimed the witching hour, they congregated at the mansion's corroded iron portals, their torches cleaving through the dense mist that enshrouded the precincts. The atmosphere hung heavy with an otherworldly tensity as they pried open the creaking doors, the auditory reverberations resonating through the desolation like a plaintive wail. The manor appeared ensnared in temporal stasis, its dilapidated walls adorned with weathered wallpaper, narrating sagas of opulence bygone. Furniture, shrouded in dusty sheets, lay frozen in a perpetual state of abandonment. The air within was oppressive, nearly suffocating, as if the very essence of the mansion resisted the intrusion of the living. Venturing deeper into the edifice, an eerie melody wafted through the air, emanating from an age-old grand piano nestled in the corner of the grand foyer. The keys moved with an ethereal finesse, untouched by mortal hands. Each note elicited spine-chilling tremors, a premonitory symphony harmonizing with the specters that loitered in the obscurity. As they ascended a grand staircase, groaning under the weight of their tentative footfalls, the temperature plummeted. Ghostly breath hung in the air, materializing into ethereal configurations that beckoned the group further into the abyss. Portraits on the walls stared with vacant eyes, their gaze tracking the intruders as they delved into the epicenter of shadows. In a dimly lit chamber, they stumbled upon a room draped in cobwebs, its walls embellished with arcane symbols pulsating with an otherworldly vitality. A solitary, flickering candle cast undulating shadows on the floor as a malevolent voice murmured from the shadows, narrating archaic incantations that shackled the mansion to an indescribable force. One by one, the group succumbed to nightmarish visions, horrifying glimpses into the macabre past of the mansion. Phantom footsteps reverberated through the corridors, and spectral apparitions materialized in the mirrors, their tormented visages mirroring the agony that saturated the very walls. As the night unfolded, the demarcations between the living and the departed blurred. Trapped in a convoluted labyrinth of shifting passageways and interminable chambers, their panicked cries were swallowed by the malevolent laughter echoing through the haunted manor. Temporal distortions manifested within Blackthorn Manor. Days morphed into interminable nights, and the group aged precipitously as the malevolent entity drained vitality from their very souls. Shadows cavorted in a morbid revelry, their contorted shapes metamorphosing into grotesque forms that whispered pledges of perpetual torment. Once curious explorers, now feeble and enervated, stumbled upon a concealed chamber deep within the mansion. At its core lay an ancient, tattered tome, the fount of the cursed incantations that bound them to this spectral purgatory. Amidst the feeble flickers of their dwindling candles, they commenced reciting the incantations, yearning to sever the fetters of eldritch horror. Yet, as the final utterances escaped their lips, the very fabric of reality unraveled. The walls of Blackthorn Manor groaned and contorted, merging with the tortured spirits that lingered within. The mansion transmogrified into a nightmarish entity, a sentient, pulsating abomination hungering for the souls of the living. And thus, Blackthorn Manor endured as a monument to the horrors that transcended temporal constraints. Its malevolent influence disseminated like a contagion, ensnaring unwitting victims within its ever-shifting corridors, where the echoes of tormented souls and the lunatic laughter of an ageless malevolence endured ad infinitum, a chilling testament to the unfathomable depths of temporal terror, concealed within the forsaken halls of Ravensbrook. In the obscure and nearly forgotten hamlet of Ravenshadow, deeply ensconced within the ominous embrace of the Blackwood Forest, there loomed an ancient mansion, a spectral edifice that murmured of unimaginable dread. The denizens of the town, their eyes shrouded in a veil of terror, skirted the mansion as though it were a contagion, cognizant that within its malevolent walls lay secrets so profound as to defy comprehension. This mansion, a macabre structure christened Hollow Manor, had served as the abode for the enigmatic Holloway family for epochs. Myths wove tales of a curse that enshrouded the lineage, a curse that warped the very fabric of their souls, binding them eternally to the mansion. The air enveloping the mansion exuded a malevolence that clung to the essence of reality itself, and the moon, when it deigned to cast its pallid glow upon the mansion, appeared to quiver in apprehension. On a night destined for destiny's caprice, the clock's chimes melding with the witching hour, an assembly of unsuspecting adolescents, enticed by the forbidden allure of enigma, resolved to delve into the abyss of Hollow Manor. The moonlight, capricious in its dance through the gnarled boughs of the surrounding arboreal sentinels, accompanied the group as they traversed the groaning threshold, their nerves wrought with anticipation. Within the mansion's recesses, the ambiance was stifling, as though the very walls pulsed with a sentient malevolence. The floorboards groaned beneath the burden of their presence, and shadows cavorted eerily upon the walls. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinthine corridors of the mansion, the atmosphere grew colder, and susurrations reverberated through the vacuous halls. A chance encounter led them to a dilapidated library, its shelves sagging beneath the weight of antiquated tomes coated in the patina of ages. One tome, in particular, seized their attention, a weathered grimoire, its bindings fashioned from the very skin of humanity. Upon the opening of this accursed volume, An abrupt gust extinguished their lanterns, consigning them to the abyss of absolute darkness. Panic ensued, the group fumbling in vain to rekindle their lanterns, but the oppressive darkness seemed to resist their feeble entreaties. Audible whispers materialized, sinister voices taunting them from the concealed recesses of the shadows. The temperature plummeted, and an arctic zephyr swept through the library. The grimoire, now ajar to a page adorned with an otherworldly script, emitted an holy luminescence. A spectral entity materialized, a visage cloaked in tattered vestments, its countenance obscured by the play of shadows. In guttural utterances, ancient and primordial, the figure spoke, and an imperceptible force tugged at the very essence of their existence. Their screams harmonized with the otherworldly cacophony, and the library's walls seemed to contract inexorably. As the figure elevated its skeletal appendage, the grimoire's pages turned, unveiling tableaus of indescribable horrors, visions that contorted their cognizance and unraveled the seams of their sanity. Within the confines of Hollow Manor, time itself underwent a disconcerting warp. The adolescents found themselves ensnared in a nightmarish, recursive loop, perpetually reliving their descent into madness. Each iteration introduced new horrors. The mansion transmogrifying and shape-shifting, evolving into an ever-mutating labyrinth of dread. Days metamorphosed into nights, and the demarcation between actuality and phantasm blurred into an indistinct miasma. The adolescents, now mere vestiges of their former selves, wandered the mansion's corridors ceaselessly, their anguished pleas unheard by the realm beyond. The curse of Hollow Manor ensnared them, chaining their souls to the malevolent entity that lurked within. Thus endured the legend of Hollow Manor, a cautionary narrative whispered by those who dared to approach the perimeter of the Blackwood Forest. The township of Ravenshadow, enveloped in a perpetual penumbra, stood as a testament to the inexorable grasp of temporal horror that resided within the forsaken ramparts of Hollow Manor, a place where nightmares bled into actuality, and the tapestry of time unfurled into an interminable, harrowing loop. In the obscure, overlooked hamlet known as Ravensbrook, deeply ensconced within the heart of an impenetrable, mysterious forest, an ancient edifice stood in ominous grandeur, casting a looming shadow upon the landscape. This archaic structure, whispered about in furtive tones by the townsfolk, bore the ominous moniker of Blackwood Manor. Abandoned for epochs, the mansion's desolation was eclipsed by a history so dark that it permeated the very essence of Ravensbrook soil. The arcane yarn spun through the town's gossip mill suggested that the mansion harbored a malevolent curse, a curse purportedly wrought by the wrathful spirits of a family whose demise unfolded in gruesome theatrics within the mansion's walls. The saga unfolded with the Blackwoods, once an eminent lineage that suffered a precipitous fall from grace, entangled in the enigma of cryptic calamities. Whispers, akin to wildfire, spread tales of lunacy, and a sinister force coiled around the family, prompting the townsfolk to shun the Blackwoods, leaving them cloistered within the confines of their foreboding mansion. One particular night, under the sinister glow of a blood-red moon, a tempest of cataclysmic proportions besieged Ravensbrook. A bone-chilling wind, laced with an impending sense of foreboding, swept through the desolate streets. A cohort of intrepid teenagers, drawn to the macabre allure, resolved to plumb the secrets of the Blackwood Manor, unwittingly courting a thrill destined to eternally alter their fate. Beyond the groaning gates, An otherworldly presence clung to the air as the teenagers, armed solely with feeble flashlights and uneasy laughter, delved into the Stygian depths. The initial floor resonated with the spectral whispers of bygone souls. Shadows pirouetted along the walls, and the atmosphere congealed with each advancing step. Undeterred, the group pressed forward, an unwavering determination to unveil the enigma of Blackwood Manor propelling them. Ascending the grand staircase, the ambient temperature plummeted and the air became stifling. Room after room unraveled remnants of a family ensnared by madness and malevolence. Tattered portraits adorned the walls, capturing the vacant gazes of Blackwood ancestors. In the grand ballroom, the spectral echoes of a long-forgotten waltz reverberated through the ages, sending tremors down the spines of the intruders. At the stroke of midnight, an abrupt hush descended upon the mansion. An oppressive energy permeated the air, an unseen force compelling the teenagers deeper into the abyss. They stumbled upon a clandestine chamber, concealed behind a deceptive wall where an ancient ritual had transpired centuries prior. Symbols, etched in blood, adorned the walls, and an ancient grimoire lay open on an altar. Unbeknownst to the intruders, they had roused a malevolent entity, ravenous for the souls of the living. Whispers escalated into anguished cries, and the temperature plunged to an unbearable cold. The group, gripped by terror, endeavored to escape the mansion, yet the very walls seemed to warp and ensnare them within its malevolent clutches. Through twisting corridors, the vengeful spirits of the Blackwoods manifested, spectral forms reaching out to seize the intruders. One after another, the teenagers succumbed to the unrelenting onslaught of the supernatural. Their screams harmonized with the ghostly wails of the accursed family. The once dormant Blackwood Manor pulsated with unholy vigor, malevolence radiating like a contagious malady throughout Ravensbrook. A town that had expunged its haunted history was now condemned to a relentless cycle. The Blackwood Manor, a festering lesion on the tapestry of reality, evolved into a nexus for the supernatural, ensnaring lost souls and dark entities in its ever-expanding web. Ravensbrook, once a quaint haven, now stood as a nightmarish expanse, its streets haunted by the tormented echoes of yesteryears. Thus, the chronicle of Blackwood Manor endured, its horror transcending temporal boundaries, ensnaring the living and the deceased in an eternal choreography of malevolence. Ravensbrook vanished from maps and memories, swallowed whole by the insatiable darkness emanating from the cursed mansion, leaving behind only the eerie resonance of lost souls ensnared in an unending nocturnal reverie.